Hi, Ben here from Trident Fly Fishing, and today I've got with me the all-new Greys Wing Streamflex. This is the top of the line for 2023 Greys rod, and I'm really excited to check it out. The all-new Wing replaces the GR80 in the Greys lineup, and the GR80 was actually one of my favorite rods at the middle-ish price point. It was just an absolutely fantastic casting rod at a great price. Unfortunately, here in the US, not many people bought it, and that was honestly a mistake. It was really good. And I'm really hoping that the Wing performs just as well as that GR80. The market really could use a high-performing, lower to middle-priced rod, and one that can bring Greys back into the spotlight. But before we get to how this rod casts, let's walk you through some of the features on this all-new Wing Streamflex. Starting from the bottom, you'll notice that they've upgraded the componentry on this rod from the lower end rods like the Lance and the Kite. We've got a double up-locking reel seat here, but it's in fact asymmetrical. And if you watched our video on the Hardy Ultralight SR, you'll note that it was something I really liked. It feels and looks round, but has just got a tiny flat spot to keep it lined up perfectly. It's a really neat idea. Then they replaced the standard anodized aluminum with a nice wooden spacer here, and that transitions to a fairly decent reversed half-wells grip. Again, the grip here is about the same as the Lance. It's not super high-grade cork, but very, very functional. Then you'll note this bright red label kind of brings that Greys red logo back into the spotlight. It might be a bit much for some people. I kind of like it. It's way less offensive than some fully red rods that have been made in the past, or continue to be made. As we move up the blank, this blank is made with 3M Powerlux resin. It's sort of the earlier little brother of Sintrix, which is another 3M resin that Hardy Greys likes to use. Needless to say, it's designed to make rods stronger and lighter, and it does. You'll also notice that they've got alignment dots here, but in fact, the Greys alignment dots are actually even better because they've got this neat line here, so the alignment actually runs all the way through to the next section, making it even easier to line up that rod. And as we move up, we've got hard chrome stripping guides and dark single foot guides moving up the rod. But that's not all. They've actually made some of the single foot guides, especially at the tip section, much smaller in diameter than what you'd be used to seeing. And while that might not be what you'd want for big saltwater fish, it actually is designed to increase accuracy on the rod. And I think it actually does work. You just get less wobble in the line, and it makes a lot of sense. Bass rods have been doing this with micro guides for years. But that's enough about the features on the rod. Let's take it out and see how it casts. I wanted to briefly interrupt this review to let you know that this video is supported 100% by your purchases at Trident Fly Fishing. So if you're in the market for some new tackle, check us out at tridentflyfishing.com. So getting this new Greys Wing out in the field, starting at our first distance of 30 feet, you'll notice right away that this is a fast rod, definitely designed to be high performing, but comparing it to the Lance, it actually is a little bit softer in the tip and therefore provides a little bit better feedback on responsiveness at that shorter distance. Accuracy, of course, really, really good in close, but it's still a pretty quick rod, so don't expect tons and tons of feel. Move back to 45 feet, highly, highly accurate. And I think that's when you start to see how this rod is designed to perform. Overall, I felt like this rod was a little bit more punishing of casting mistakes than most of the rods I've cast recently. It's not that this rod is overly fast, because it's not. It's definitely, I would say, on the fast side of the medium fast border. It's just a rod that really wants to throw tight loops into the wind every single time. And even with our MPX line, it didn't moderate that action at all. And so if you're making really great casts, 45 feet or even at 60 feet, you're gonna do really well with this rod. If your timing's a little bit off, it's not gonna be as accurate as you think. And moving back to 60 feet, the story's the same. It's got plenty of power, plenty of accuracy, but you really have to be on your timing. And I would say that this rod is, again, going to be for the better caster and somebody who's looking to get high performance out of a rod and who needs to punch into the wind and wants that faster action and is a good enough caster to take advantage of it. Now, let's go inside and give it a Poseidon score. After casting this brand new Wing Streamflex, I was left a little bit confused because on the one hand, it's a great casting rod, but on the other hand, you really need to be very good to make it perform to the limit. So what you're left with is an intermediate to advanced rod that's priced more like a beginner to intermediate rod. And while I do think this is great, if you're looking for a Greys rod and you're not out casting all day, every day, and you're not fishing, really technical tailwaters in places where making those highly accurate long distance casts is important, you're probably better off with a Lance. And it'll save you a couple $100. So let's move on to our Poseidon score. Starting with accuracy, this rod is accurate, but not as accurate across the board as often as the Lance was, and it earns an 8 out of 10 for accuracy. In terms of components, this rod is solidly better than the Lance, but it's still going to be fairly standard in terms of its build quality, and it earns a 7 out of 10. Up next is distance and power, and this rod is definitely going to be better than the Lance, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Up next is grip, and the grip here is totally fine. They've done some things with composite cork, but they actually don't really change how this rod works and how it feels, and it earns a 7 out of 10. In terms of looks and workmanship, this rod and the Lance and many other price point rods made overseas are about the same, and it earns a 6.5 out of 10. Up next is swing weight, and this wing comes in at 66 gram meters squared, which is actually a little bit heavier than the Lance, but still solidly in the middle of the 5-weight world of swing weights. And unfortunately, this rod is priced a lot higher than the Lance, but it's not a difference that you're going to notice, and it earns a 7 out of 10. Up next is value, and at just a hair under $400, it's hard for me to say that this wing is a good value. There are other brands producing rods at this price point, and I think actually for most casters and most anglers, the Lance that is way cheaper is going to be the better rod. That's all to say that it earns a 5 out of 10 for value. And last but not least is the cool factor. This rod here, like the Lance in the USA, is just not that cool. Greys has not quite made the comeback that they were hoping for, and it earns a 4 out of 10. And that leaves us with a total Poseidon score of 48.5, which is definitely on the low side. And as we've discussed, there's a lot of reasons for that. But it's actually a little bit lower than I expected, and I do feel that this rod will definitely have a following. For certain people in certain situations, this is actually going to be a really good fit. Add to that this is the 9'5" weight, but they make this Greys wing in a huge range of sizes, and I feel like a lot of people can branch out and buy those oddball sizes like 11-foot 3-weights in this rod that you can't get in a lot of similarly priced rods. Tell us what you think about this Greys rod and the entire Greys lineup by leaving a comment in the box below. And if you have questions about the new Wing Streamflex, don't hesitate to give us a call at 888-413-5211 or email us 24/7 at support@tridonflyfishing.com. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.